Hello everybody, welcome back for number 14. The first thing we want to do is sketch this angle in standard position, and so to do that we need to think about common denominators. If this is really pi, if the denominator is 12, this is really 12 pi over 12, which means halfway between would be 6 pi over 12 here, and would be 18 pi over 12 here. And if we went all the way around, or 2 pi, you could also call this angle 24 pi over 12. So if I first want to draw it in standard position, that means 7 pi over 12 is in the second quadrant, just past 6 pi over 12, and the angle would be going in a counterclockwise fashion. This would be your answer in standard position. The reference angle has to deal with the relation to the x-axis. So if we'd like to find this red angle, that is the x-axis minus where we are. So that is really going to be 12 pi over 12, because this is the closest x-axis it relates to. And let me erase this because I think that's a little confusing. So you're taking 12 pi over 12, and then you are subtracting the angle of 7 pi over 12. So your reference angle is 5 pi over 12. A positive coterminal angle is when you go all the way around the unit circle one time counterclockwise. So you take your angle, which is 7 pi over 12, and you would add 2 pi, which is 24 pi over 12, and that would get you 31 pi over 12. To find a negative coterminal angle, you would take 7 pi over 12, and you would subtract to 24 pi over 12. And if you did that, you would get 17 pi over 12. Now technically for both of these you have infinite answers, but that's the first positive and negative one that I found. The complement of the angle means you are doing 90 degrees minus the angle. Now 90 degrees in this case is pi over 2, but pi over 2 in this particular case is really 6 pi over 12. So you're taking 6 pi over 12 minus the angle, which is 7 pi over 12, and that is really negative pi over 12. Now, negative pi over 12 is not possible because you can't have a negative complement, so there really is no complement in this situation. The supplement means I'm taking 180 minus the angle, 180 degrees. 180 degrees really means pi, but in this case, that's really 12 pi over 12, subtracted the angle theta, which is 7 pi over 12. So the answer, just like the reference angle, would be 5 pi over 12. The reason these are the same answer is because both of them relate to this x-axis right here, or 12 pi over 12, or pi. Number 15, use the unit circle to answer these problems. You want to find the exact ratio value. Really means that you're plugging in an angle and you're getting out a coordinate value. So if I'd like to find the cosecant of negative 8 pi over 3, as has come up on previous tests, negative 8 pi over 3 is not on the unit circle. So we need to find a coterminal angle, which with a denominator of 3, 2 pi is really 6 pi over 3. So if I added one coterminal angle, I would get negative 2 pi over 3, but that is not on the unit circle yet. So I'd add another 6 pi over 3, and I would get 4 pi over 3. So this is really asking for the cosecant value at 4 pi over 3. Now cosecant goes with sine, so we're dealing with y values. So the sine value at 4 pi over 3, which is right here, is negative root 3 over 2, which means that the cosecant value is the reciprocal, which is negative 2 over root 3, but if rationalized, the answer would be negative 2 root 3 over 3. Part B, the tangent of 855 degrees. This is definitely not on the unit circle, so if I took 855 and I subtracted 360 degrees twice, this is really the same as the tangent value at 135 degrees. And again, feel free to subtract 360 2 times to get this. So if I'd like to find the tangent value there, tangent is really y divided by x, but at any 45 based angle, which is right here, the tangent value is always negative 1. But if you don't believe me, remember, tangent's really y over x, so you're really taking root 2 over 2 and you're dividing negative root 2 over 2, which is really root 2 over 2 times the reciprocal. So both of these cross out, and so you are just left with negative 1. Again, some of you already at this point have memorized that this is the negative 1 value. Number 16, find the exact angles from 0 to 2 pi. So again, what this direction really means is that there are two answers. So I'm going to write that down again here. So we really have two answers, and they're in radians. So when I say that the cosecant of theta is negative 2, that really means that sine of theta equals negative 1/2. So we're looking for the values on the unit circle that the angles are, or the y values, are negative 1/2. And that is true in two places if I'm going one time around. That is true here, and that is also true here. So my two answers for theta would be 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. Part B is another equation. If it tells you that the cotangent is undefined, that's really telling you that cotangent of theta is something over 0. Let's put 1 as a placeholder. So what that really means, if I'm thinking reciprocals, is that tangent of theta is really equal to 0 over 1, or in other words, where the tangent values are 0, or where y divided by x is really 0. So if I look at my unit circle, the two places that when I take y divided by x is 0 would be here at 0 and here at pi, because 0 divided by negative 1 and 0 divided by 1 is 0. So my two answers for theta are 0 and pi. Number 17, find the exact value of the inverses, and these are, when you're dealing with inverses, we're dealing with the arc, and inverses really help you find angles. So both of these answers should be angles, but we also, with these angles, need to deal with restrictions. So if I'm thinking arctangent is restricted to quadrants 1 and 4, and so the place I cannot cross this axis here, I'm stuck in these two quadrants. Tangent is negative root 3 at 5 pi over 3. So the angle that this is true is 5 pi over 3. However, 5 pi over 3 is not between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. Or in other words, I can't go this way, can't cross that wall, so I have to go backwards this way. So how you'd write your answer is really negative pi over 3. Part B, we want to find the angle where the cosine is negative root 3 over 2. Like here, we want to find the angle where the tangent value is negative root 3. So let me erase this on here, just for understanding purposes. Arc cosine first, when I take the inverse of both sides, is restricted to quadrants 1 and 2. So we're looking up here only. Where is the x value negative root 3 over 2 up there? Right here at the angle of 5 pi over 6. Number 18, we're dealing with composition of functions. And so let me grab this unit circle and bring it down a little bit here. So we want to work our way inside out. So if I'd like to find the sine or the y value at 5 pi over 3, that is going to be negative root 3 over 2. And then just like the previous problem, I would like to find the arc cosine, or I'd like to find the angle where the x value is negative root 3 over 2. We actually just did that one up here for part B. The angle in the restrictions, again, arc cosine is restricted to 1 and 2. The angle where the x value is negative root 3 over 2 is again at 5 pi over 6. Part B, if I start inside out this time, arctangent, I am finding an angle in quadrants arctan 1 or 4. So I'm restricted to these two quadrants where the tangent value is negative 1. Well, the tangent value is negative 1 at 7 pi over 4 technically, but because I cannot cross, I'm going to write this as negative pi over 4 instead. So we need to find the cosecant value at negative pi over 4. So we could find the sine value first. The sine value at negative pi over 4, or the y value here, is negative root 2 over 2, which means that the cosecant value is the reciprocal, which is really negative 2 over root 2, which if rationalized is negative 2 root 2 over 2, or really negative root 2. Number 19, find the exact value of the composition. Please consider drawing a picture. Negative 6/11 is not on the unit circle, so again, it is always a good idea to draw a triangle. Arc sine is restricted to quadrants 1 and 4. Because the ratio is originally negative, I know that my triangle has to be in the 4th quadrant. So here is my reference angle. Arc sine, again, this helps you figure out what side of the triangles you're dealing with. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, which means we have opposite over hypotenuse. The 6 has to be negative because it's going down, or the y's are negative in the 4th quadrant. If I'd like to find the x side here, I'm going to use the Pythagorean Theorem. Negative 6 squared plus x squared equals 11 squared. 36 plus x squared equals 121. If I subtract 36 to the other side, I get x squared equals 85, which means that this value is root 85, and it's positive because the x values are positive in the 4th quadrant. So now that I have my triangle done, I need to find the cotangent value. If tangent is opposite over adjacent, cotangent is adjacent over opposite. So in this case, my cotangent value would be adjacent over opposite, or root 85 over negative 6, or you could make the entire fraction negative and have your answer like this. Number 20, use your calculator to evaluate the trig functions, round to 3 decimal places. When you're given cotangent of negative 124 degrees, remember that cotangent is a reciprocal function. And so we're not flipping the angle, we are flipping the function. And we're not finding an inverse, we're finding a reciprocal. So this is the same as 1 over tangent of negative 124 degrees. Remember, because this is given in degrees, your calculator must be in degrees to get this correct. And if I take 1 divided by the tangent of negative 124 degrees, the answer would be 0.675. Number 21, given the following, solve for theta in radians. Make sure your calculator's in radians. Your final answers must be positive and go around 1 time from 0 to 2 pi. So if I first figure out what theta is, I need to take the inverse of both sides, or in other words, take the arctangent of both sides. And if I do that and I make sure that my calculator is in radians, I get negative 0.576. Because arctangent is restricted to quadrants 1 and 4, and the original ratio is negative, I know that my angle must start in the 4th quadrant, but that means that the reference angle is a positive 0.576. And that's helpful because the reference angle helps me work my way all the way around. If I look at the original problem, we're asking where is tangent negative, and tangent is negative in quadrants 2 and 4 when I take y divided by x. So my final answers are going to be here and in the 4th quadrant. If I focus on my 2nd quadrant answer first, I'm going towards 3.14, but don't quite get there. So it would be 3.14 minus the reference angle, and I'll get that answer in just a second. My 4th quadrant answer looks like it's already there. However, we need a positive answer. So we have to go all the way around like this. We are going almost to 6.28, but not quite. So it would be 6.28 minus 0.576. If I actually calculate these, this answer would be 2.564. And this answer would be 5.704. Rather than rushing this problem, I'm going to start this one in the next video. Thank you.